Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Garden Hour with MU Extension. My name is Debi Kelly. I'm a field specialist in horticulture and the State Extension Master Gardener Coordinator, and I'm located in Boone County. And I'm happy to be on the call today and learn some great information from some of my colleagues, as well as for myself to present you some great information. We enjoy what we do. We love sharing our information. And when you guys ask us questions that we have to answer for you on the Garden Hour, we simply love it because if we don't have an immediate answer, we're the kind of people that just absorb and love new information or try to find an answer. And we love doing that. So by all means, feel free to always continuously send in your questions. We're happy to do that. So here is a list of who we all are in the different counties. You'll notice that there are quite a few positions that are actually open. Don't let that bother you. If you're in a county and it says open, it's okay. You can contact one of the others of us that are listed on this map here, and our email addresses are located to the right. And I can show this later after we're coming to the conclusion today. So if you need to jot down someone's email address, by all means, you'll have access to be able to do that. Just so that you're aware, we do offer this via Zoom live. We also have it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel through the Integrated Pest Management Program on campus, and we thank them for allowing us to use some of their folks as well as being able to put this information out there so that you have access to it on an ongoing basis. And on that IPM channel, we actually have what we call a snippet. So each week we will select one of those questions that was asked and the answer, and we'll put that in and list it as what we call the snippet. And so you'll see those, they'll be listed under here where it says home horticulture. This one was on critter control. This one was on how to cure onions. And so this is an old picture. So we have a lot more of the snippets that are out there. But you can also watch us live on YouTube as well at that same YouTube MUIPM channel, and you'll see it says Horticulture Town Hall, and all you got to do is click on that, the latest one that says live, and you'll be listening to us live as well. If you miss one of our town halls or our garden hour, don't fret. You can go out to this YouTube channel and you can watch and click through to get any topic information you might want. Again, these are always out there. So feel free to do that. I'm going to go ahead. First, let me see. Gwen has changed her name to ask questions here. So if you have a question in particular you would like to have answered, or if you've got a question in general for whatever the topic might be and you want a little bit more clarity, or if you got something else that you're like, what about this with whatever that answer was? We're always happy to try to answer that question, or if possible, or if we need to, we'll answer it next week for you. And let's see, I believe that's all for right now. I'm going to go ahead and stop share. Zach couldn't be with us for the weather report, but he did record one for us. And so we're going to go ahead and Jared's going to present that for us. So thank you, Jared.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our Missouri Weekly Weather Summary. I want to start today by continuing to look at how our August month-to-date summary is shaping up, and really kind of a repeat from last week. So if we look at our 5 sites around the state here, still seeing our August month-to-date temperatures running below average all across the state so far. And so still just slightly below average, maybe 1 to 3 degrees below, but still seeing those cooler than average temperatures in August. And this is coming off the heels of a cooler than average July as well. So with only about 10 days left in the month here, we'll see how this trend continues. Just to put it in perspective, late July and early August are climatologically some of the warmest times of the year for us. And so on the map on the right here shows our highest one-day high temperature from over the last 30 days from late July through August 19th. And so this is basically going to be a map showing the hottest temperature we've reached over the last 30 days. And I just wanted to show this map because we've definitely been seasonally warm. So even in Northeast Missouri, where you see those dark blues, those are highs of 90 to 91 degrees. But I think the lack of kind of that heat wave or late summer record-breaking heat we think of, maybe triple-digit temperatures, is pretty interesting. So unless you're in far southwest Missouri on the Oklahoma border here, nobody in the state has touched 100 degrees in that late July through August period. So again, typically a very warm time of the year, and we continue to run below average. And I think most of us will take that for this time of year as well. The other story in August has been that we've really kind of dried out as well. So had really bounced off of a very wet spring and a wet early summer, but late in July we started to dry out, and that has continued into August. And so you can see here at all of our major sites except for Columbia, running about an inch and even greater than an inch below normal for the month so far on rainfall. And so on the right here, this is a map of our month-to-date accumulated precipitation. And really, we can see a few spots that have gotten that rainfall where you see the darker greens and blues. But I wanted to show this map to really highlight areas like Cape Girardeau, where we see those yellows. Almost no rainfall during the month of August so far. And so anywhere from a tenth to a half an inch, less than an inch of rainfall in St. Louis, and less than an inch in areas of western Missouri as well. So do have some very dry August month-to-date totals in parts of the state here. And if we look at our rainfall totals over the last 7 days, and these are our radar estimated totals, this map actually looks pretty similar to the last one, and we see those areas of heavier rainfall in northwest Missouri, south central Missouri as well, and southwest. And so most of our August rainfall has really occurred over the last 7 to 10 days here, and that's made a big dent in areas that have seen those healthier totals during that time. But for the most part, a lot of us have been dry here. And in fact, if you look at the past 70 days, a lot of, for example, the I-70 corridor from Kansas City to St. Louis has been quite dry. So with our dry conditions and very mild temperatures right now, as you can imagine, not a lot of hazards today. So we're not worried about severe weather or flooding. But with our drier pattern, I did want to show the most recent update to the U.S. Drought Monitor map. And so this was released on Thursday, August 15th here. And we continue to see a lot of yellow on this map. So that's indicating abnormally dry conditions, or maybe looking to head into drought. And then we also see in southwest Missouri, where you see the tan color here, in an area classified as that D1 or moderate drought. And so a lot of this is based on really precipitation over the past 30 to 45 days, where we're seeing some of that dryness, but also have seen some impacts to agriculture and plants as well. Getting in that late summer period, even with the cooler than average temperatures, still a critical time for plants. And so some of the locations that are missing out on the rainfall are seeing some impacts there. So, but still no very severe or extreme drought conditions. Again, really just watching the short-term precipitation deficits in the time of year for right now. But we'll continue to keep an eye on this drought monitor map to see how things evolve. And so looking forward in the forecast, I actually will mix it up today and switch straight to the day 1 through 7 precipitation forecast here, because it's going to be a very quiet week and that little to no rainfall is expected over the next week. And so here, this is our again 7-day precipitation forecast, valid through next Wednesday. And you can see a lot of white on the map, including across Missouri here. And so this is indicating for the southern half of the state, we're predicting no precipitation. And even the northern half of the Missouri, where you do see these greens on the map for these precipitation totals, I just want to note that these are very light totals. Kind of the darker greens are getting up to 1/4 to 1/2 an inch, maybe in northeast Missouri. But those light greens are anywhere from a trace and no rainfall to 1/10 of an inch. And so light amounts, and even where we're expecting maybe that 1/4 to 1/2 inch, That's later in the weekend towards Monday. And so if you've checked the forecast, you're not going to see a lot of rain chances here over the next week. And so with not a lot of precipitation to worry about, what are our temperatures going to do here as well? And so I think the big story will be in the short term, continuing these kind of cool, almost fall-like temperatures here. So this map I'll show here this shows our predicted high temperatures for today across the entire U.S. And so where you can see the numbers on the map, 76 in Columbia, 78 in St. Louis, 80 in Kansas City. Those are our forecast high temperatures. And then I also wanted to show these colors on the map. Uh, they're indicating whether those high temperatures are above or below average. And so where we see all these greens and blues across Missouri, showing that those highs in the upper 70s and 80s are really around 10 degrees below average here. And so much cooler than we expect for this time of year. But I want to now move through the end of the week and weekend and show how this pattern of cooler temperatures is expected to change, and really watch some of this warmth out to our south and west. And I'm now going to advance here through tomorrow. Still pretty cool temperatures, still right around 80 degrees across the state. But by Friday, really returning more towards normal temperatures, mid to upper 80s. And by Saturday, we start to see some of those warm colors build in, back to above average temperatures, and low to mid 90s by Sunday across a lot of the states. So with this dry pattern, we are expected some of this heat to our south and southwest to move more across the area and return to above average temperatures here by the end of the weekend. And so we'll watch that warm up here over the next few days. And with not a lot of weather here in our next 7 days, I did want to take a few minutes and just have the opportunity to go over some of our updated, maybe more seasonal outlooks here. And so, but first, as always, just looking ahead at our 8 to 14 day outlook in week 2 here. And what we see here is hopefully some of that heat subsiding. So we can see for most of Missouri, the tendency is in the forecast is leaning towards near normal temperatures for now. So that would be a nice relief going into that first week of September. But a little bit of concern here with our week 2 precipitation outlook, 40 to 50% chance of below average precipitation. And so if that verifies, could continue to see concerns with dryness there. But I'm going to move ahead here. These maps were released by NOAA's Climate Prediction Center last week on August 15th here. And this is the September monthly forecast. And so on the left here, we see our temperature outlook calling for above normal temperatures for nearly all of the United States and including Missouri, although fortunately that highest probability of above normal temperatures is off to our west here. But if we look here on the right, along with that core of above average temperatures, also some dryness expected more to our west, but also getting into Missouri here. And so looking at September, a little more confidence in these above average temperatures, still a little bit of uncertainty with the probability for below average precipitation. Those probabilities are pretty low, but we do need to watch the general pattern for this heat and dryness to our west here. Now I'm going to move ahead now to our seasonal temperature outlook, and you're going to notice those maps didn't change a lot. And so this outlook is now valid for September, October, and November. This is our fall temperature outlook, and a lot of the same patterns. So warmer than average temperatures for most of the U.S., concentrated more to our west and to our east in the fall as well. But again, looking at the seasonal precipitation outlook, we're really right on the edge of these higher probabilities for below average precipitation. And so I think this will be the kind of story we look at in the fall here. This is typical for an emerging La Nina pattern where we see kind of a warm and drier fall, especially to our west in the plains. And so just wanted to show these seasonal outlooks. Still not a lot of confidence in these forecasts. Our percentages are low, but we'll certainly watch to see how this forecast evolves throughout the fall. And so that's all I've got for today. And thank you for your time, and hope to see you all next week. Thank you.
I hope everyone enjoys Zach when he is here, or if he is not, he does a video for us. This one in particular, it was interesting. I just need to know and understand that I'm probably going to have to pay more attention to some of my pots that I have outside. I live in a location where I can only have pots. I don't have a vegetable garden or a flower garden, really. And so that just means extra care in making sure that I get my plants watered. So I always appreciate what he has to say. And that forecast for the next couple of months, that's really interesting to keep hold of in our minds as well, because as we listen to people in the future, hopefully colors for the fall can be affected by how much moisture a lot of our plants, a lot of our trees are going to get. So we always, I know I do, I appreciate his conversations with us. So next we had a question come in. They were talking about when is the best time to fertilize trees, as well as some fruit trees, because they put in a few of those. Is that done at the same time? Is it not? And what is the best advice for fertilizing those trees? So Jennifer's going to go ahead and visit with us today about that.
All right, thank you, Debbie. And that's a good question. You know, a lot of people want to know when to fertilize trees, whether it be woody ornamental trees, you know, for your yard, like the shade trees, or fruit trees. And I'm going to address these questions. So one thing to ask yourself is, do I need to fertilize? You know, do you really need to fertilize the trees in your yard? Well, trees and shrubs in a landscape may require little or no supplemental fertilization if plants planted in the right location, fallen leaves are shredded in place, or the surrounding lawn areas are fertilized. So if you have trees in this situation where you have been fertilizing the lawn, you've been shredding your leaves, which is adding the organic matter back to the soil, and if you've planted your plants in the right place and they're happy, they may not need to be fertilized. I know that in my yard and here at the extension office, we don't fertilize the big mature trees. It's just not necessary. And I do fertilize my lawn. I don't fertilize it regularly, but I do from time to time. And the trees will pick up some of that fertilizer. Now, things to look for in a tree that may tell you it needs fertilizer are poor tree growth. So if your tree is just not growing very well, maybe it's stunted, it may be pale green, or have yellow leaves, it may have mottled patterns between the veins, dead spots, you know, the stunted leaves or early loss of leaves. Those could all be signs that your tree is starving and that it really does need some fertilizer. So before we fertilize, let's look at our trees. And if they look healthy and happy, they don't need fertilizer. And if they're showing any of these symptoms, then that's an indication that they do need fertilizer. The main reason to fertilize trees and shrubs is to maintain reasonable vigor so that the plants will be able to resist environmental stresses and pests. So that's the main reason that we want to fertilize trees. I often get calls throughout the year and people are having an issue with their tree and they want to fertilize it because they think it will make the tree get better. And that is not often the case. So don't expect fertilizer to solve the problems associated with careless planting, improper watering, or poor drainage. I would also add southwest injury, you know, the winter injury, that the crack in the bark. You know, if you have that in your maple tree, don't expect fertilizer to make that go away or to make the tree better. So if the tree is already suffering from an issue, like I have listed here, you know, fertilizer is not going to make it better. You need to fix the drainage. You need to water properly. And there's just some things like southwest injury that, you know, you're not going to fix, and fertilizer is not going to fix that. Avoid fertilizing newly planted trees with a high rate of nitrogen fertilizer. So if you plant a new tree in the springtime, you don't want to give it a bunch of nitrogen fertilizer. You want that tree to get established first, establish its root system, not put on a bunch of leafy top growth. And adding nitrogen fertilizer to a newly planted tree, like I said, does cause a lot of excessive growth. And that can be at the expense of root growth, leaving the new tree susceptible to drought stress and other stresses. So it's just not a good idea to give the tree a lot of fertilizer when you plant it. A common question is, what do I use to fertilize my tree? And what is recommended is triple 10, triple 13, or triple 12. And if you look at any of the tree guides that are available, that is typically what is listed. There's usually a rule of thumb on how much to apply on the bag or in guides that you may have access to. So follow those rules of thumb. Also, if you're going to plant in a larger area, you're going to plant a lot of trees, I would prefer that people do a soil test to find out what nutrients are needed, if any, and also to find out what your pH level is. Sometimes people are adding lime and it's not necessary. So that's why it's important to do a soil test, so we can add what is needed and not add things that we don't need. The photos here are of a red buckeye tree that's in my backyard, and it's not a big tree, and it's a healthy tree. It looks really good in the spring, and it's doing what buckeyes always do in August. It is already turning yellow and not looking so great, but that's normal for a buckeye. But because it always looks really good in the spring and always dark green, I don't fertilize it. So you may think, oh, it has those beautiful flowers, she must be fertilizing it. And no, I do not fertilize that tree. Now, I will if it shows signs that it needs fertilizer, but it hasn't. The tree on the right is a catalpa tree that is near my office, and I drive past that tree, and it looks really healthy. And there would be no need to fertilize this mature tree, unless it is showing signs of stress, or I'm sorry, not stress, but signs of, a nutrition deficiency. Maybe it's turning yellow or pale. That would be a reason to fertilize it. The best time to fertilize ornamental trees is late September through early April. So that is a common question. People want to know, when should I fertilize my ornamental trees in my yard or in the landscape? So as we go through the fall months, as the trees are going into dormancy, that is a good time. So I know our forester with the Missouri Department of Conservation here always says late October into November is an ideal time in northern Missouri. But when you look at some of the guides that are out there and resources, it will tell you late September through early April. And after a hard freeze, before the ground freezes, is ideal, which kind of goes back to what our forester recommends, that late October into November. The second best time to fertilize trees, if you don't get it done in that late fall time, is March and April before the new growth begins. You never want to fertilize trees with fertilizer materials containing broadleaf weed killers, such as 2,4-D or dicamba. I have made visits to home yards where young trees have absorbed fertilizer that had 2,4-D or dicamba in it, and the tree leaves are distorted or wrinkled. Part of the question that came into us was, I have roses coming in early September and I want to encourage root growth. Do I need to fertilize them? So for established roses, there is mixed research out there. You may look at some guides and it may tell you one thing and another guide tells you another. So there is some mixed research. Some of the guides and references will say, do not fertilize in the fall, wait until spring. But I have seen other university guides that say you could apply fertilizer in late fall, but do not use a lot of nitrogen or use no nitrogen. Use bone meal or rock phosphate to promote root growth and blooms for next year. And if you are going to plant roses this fall, like what was part of the question, I'm going to plant them this fall, you want to wait until spring to fertilize. So don't plant your roses this fall, them being new roses. Don't put fertilizer in the planting hole or fertilize. Wait, just plant them and then wait till next spring to fertilize them. Regarding fruit trees, a lot of our gardeners grow fruit trees. We love to grow apples and pears or whatever fruit tree it may be. But fall is not the time to be fertilizing them. We usually plant fruit trees in the spring because that is when they're usually available in the garden centers. And we also want to fertilize trees in the spring. So, and regarding planting, so You usually plant them in the spring. If you're going to get fruit trees this fall, fall is a good time to plant trees. So just plant your fruit trees, mulch them, but do not add fertilizer. You can fertilize the trees, or you should fertilize these trees in late winter or early spring before the growth begins. And I tell gardeners here in northern Missouri, March is an ideal time to fertilize your fruit trees. So yes, it is too late to fertilize fruit trees in Missouri. And the same type of fertilizer is recommended, 12, 12, 12, or 13, 13, 13, 10, 10, 10, something like that. And again, use the rule of thumb on the bag, or refer to a guide for that information. And also part of the question that came into us was, there's an old yew hedge that I pruned heavily last February. It looks like it needs a good shave again. Is it okay to do that? Well, right now, a light trim should be okay. And I will tell you that I did do a light trim on a Japanese yew for someone last weekend. I just like lightly sheared it. Heavy pruning of a yew should not be done going into fall. So you do not want to heavily prune a yew back, because it makes it more vulnerable to winter weather. And I have seen yews in the past coming out of winter that are burnt on top. They've got that brown, rust colored windburn look. So they are more susceptible to that injury. So that's why we don't want to prune them heavily as we go into fall. March and April is the best time to prune a Japanese yew. And to end, I want to let you know about these references, and somebody can put them in the chat for me if you haven't already. And these are excellent publications. So for those of you wanting information on fertilizing and all the details about when to do it, how to do it, why, how much, these guides are what you need to look at. So you can copy the chat. Or, if you Google this last one, if you just Google Gardener's Guide to Fertilizing Trees, North Carolina State, it will pop up. But we're going to put that in the chat, and then you can save it and you can look at these references because they are excellent. And that concludes this presentation here.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I know fertilizing is always something that's important, and a lot of folks either really want to fertilize, or some folks just think that the soil has everything there. And it's good to know when you should or should not fertilize, especially trees. It's very good. So thank you so much for that.
We did have a question come in.
Go ahead.
Here, sorry. I think when you were talking about planting trees in the fall, the participant asked, when should we plant the fall garden? Would it be the right time now, or should we wait, or is it too late?
When should we plant the fall garden?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I believe Donna addressed this last week, or sometime recently, but I'll just quick mention now. Okay, I planted green beans already. I've planted spinach. I'm going to plant radishes and lettuce. So August is the month where you want to plant your fall garden. Ideally, you want your green beans and squash in closer to the early part of August, even into late July, early August for green beans, and a fall planting of squash. But there's still plenty of time to do spinach and lettuce and radishes. You could probably even do kale. I planted snow peas this past weekend, which is probably going to be a little late. They may not flower or produce in time. I have had the experience in the past when I planted them in late August, they didn't do anything. And I planted in late July before, and I have a great crop. So maybe a little late on snow peas. And I will ask Donna, you want to, you presented this before. Do you have anything to add?
The big thing is if you haven't already planted, get going, because you're running out of time. Typically for mid-Missouri South, it's about August 20th. That's your deadline. If you're in southern Missouri, it's a little later, but don't delay. And it's awfully dry out there. So if you're in an area that has not had rain, you might want to irrigate a few days beforehand, and then plant your seeds. And don't forget, you have transplants, the cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, things like that, and it needs to go in right now too.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate that. The next question that we had also came in, and I've had it brought to my attention. I've had a couple of phone calls here in the Boone County office as well. My lawn is starting to turn brown. I can pull up a piece of the turf. It still is tough to pull up just by kind of grabbing it like someone's hair and pulling. If it does come away from the soil pretty easily, it could be an indication of insects, but apparently that's not what's happening there. So she wants to know really what's going on with this. Is it too late to do anything? Can we identify what it is? She's had the same lawn care company for about 7 years, and this is the first year that she's had this kind of a problem. So Gwen's going to make an attempt to answer this question.
Unmute here. Yeah. So, like Donna said, Debbie said at the very beginning, when we get questions like this, it really gets our curiosity going, and we just kind of start going down rabbit holes and trying to find the answer to the problem. And we learn so much in this kind of a situation. So it was good to have this question. So here again, we talked about the question that we had, and I would just like for you guys, if you look at the picture, and this homeowner did a great job of giving us a series of photos that kind of really helps us see the picture. But if you wouldn't mind in the chat, just maybe either what do you think is going on, or what do you notice about this picture? Just a couple minutes here to see what you think. Actually, a few seconds, not minutes. Got a fungus, grubs, okay. Voles, heat, drought. Yeah, I think all of those are reasonable considerations to have about this. So we talked about with the grubs, maybe, and it looks like she talked about that or thought that as well, but then the pieces weren't, it didn't pull up easily, so she ruled that out. But here's kind of our take on this. Oh, let me go to the right thing here. All right, so here let's just zoom in on this a little bit. So we have, this is a little bit closer up, so we can kind of see the soil that's down below. We can kind of see the brown patchy things. And then here's a little bit closer. We're starting to see some of the spots maybe that are on the plant. And I noticed these little spots here. I don't know if there might be some mites or something there. I'm not really sure. It's a little bit hard to tell with this. I can also tell that it's really thick underneath here, just a lot of thatch underneath the green blades. And then let's zoom in a little bit closer. Here's another picture. And then we have the picture here on the right really kind of shows these spots we're seeing on some of the blades. And the homeowner did say it seems to be showing more on the fescue. It is a combination of a warm season, cool season lawn. And she did say that they are showing more on the cool season fescues than we are seeing on the others. So let's talk about this. Let's see what we got going on. So possibility one. One thought is that it could just be, she also mentioned that it was reseeded, top seeded very often. And we're starting to see some seed contamination. And one of the things that you might look for, and we didn't get pictures from the early spring, but if in the early spring you start to see kind of these flushes of lighter color green, maybe growing a little bit taller in spots, it might just be that this is a seed contamination of a type of grass that just does not do well in dry, hot conditions. It's just going to shut down during the winter, the hot summer. So this would be the picture of it in early spring, and then we start to see what it might look like later in the fall, about this time, or late in the summer, about this time of the year. So that is a possibility, but we don't know that. I'm just kind of throwing that out there as a possible scenario. And then the homeowner mentioned brown spot or brown patch. And here is a picture from a publication from North Carolina State University and Extension, and I believe that will be dropped in the chat here. Oh, it's already there. And this shows a close-up of the blade right here. And then you also see the patches. Now, one of the things that I read is that it does have these circular kind of patterns, but as it extends out, it will start to diffuse through the lawn, and you don't always see those circular patterns. It also said to look in in the early morning when it's really dewy, and if you see like white cobwebby material on this, then that might be indicative of this brown patch fungus that could be in the lawn. Our publication that we have called Managing Lawns and Turfgrass, it also says that brown patch affects tall fescue, ryegrass, and fine fescues. It's promoted by high levels of nitrogen, and it is favored by hot, humid, wet weather. So if this lawn is being treated often with fertilizer and maybe pushed, to the grasses are really pushed and to grow flush and at a high level, then that may make it a little bit more susceptible to some of these other diseases. And like I said, it can be lethal on a low cut turf. Now, I didn't see any indication in some of those pictures where it was really, really being cut too low, but it could be that as well. But those are just agricultural practices that might make the lawn more susceptible to that. I wanted to look more at the pictures. So here on the right is our control. This is the picture that we saw from North Carolina State that shows these distinct patches on here. And then I'm looking in, this is from the homeowner, and I can kind of see a similar pattern right here and maybe right here. Excuse me. So it does kind of look like it could be brown patch, and it sounds like maybe the conditions could be right with that. However, when we were looking in our guide here, integrated pest management from MU Extension, there are a lot of things that look this way. There is summer patch, there's dollar patch. So there's just a lot of different ones that you can, it says I'm breaking up. I don't know what I'm doing with my mic, but anyway, I'll try to talk directly at the computer here. But it might just be that it could be one of the others. They look very, very similar. And I think that the source for this guide is in the chat as well. And it could just be that it is environmental. Somebody dropped that in the chat as well. So is it too hot, too dry? These cool season grasses just normally shut down this time of year. So it could just be a hot, dry condition. And lawns, I think this came from South Missouri, where the soil is not very deep, it's very rocky. Could be more susceptible to some drought conditions that way. And if it's over fertilized, that could be a problem as well. You might want to consider going to the plant or submitting a sample to the plant diagnostic clinic at MU. And you would need to get like a 6-inch sample or a circular sample with leaves that are healthy and some that are showing the symptoms. And then also, okay, I don't know what to do about the speakers. I'm sorry. I'll turn it up here. I don't know if it's my connection here in the office or not. Is that any better?
Yes, a little bit better.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. And you get some healthy leaves, some stressed leaves, and then maybe also a little bit of the roots to try to get the soil off. And there are instructions on how to submit the sample on the webpage for the diagnostic clinic. So in summary, yes, it could be brown patch, but I think that there are other possibilities as well. You just got to keep asking questions. And it might be you submit a soil sample and see what kind of fertilization is really needed for your lawn. Is the lawn company just treating it as a one for all, and that's what they do with everybody in the neighborhood? Or is it something that's being prescribed specifically for your lawn? So I would, keep asking questions, get a soil sample possibly to see if the lawn company is following the recommendations that are provided by that result of those soil samples, and then take a look at MU's Extension's guide for managing lawns and turfgrass, because again, maybe the lawn company is not necessarily following right practices. And I'm not trying, that's not true for all, but just check it maybe and see if there's something maybe specific for your lawn that needs to be done a little bit differently. So I hope that kind of answers the question. I can't give a definitive. I know part of the question also was on should I spray a fungicide? And what I read about that, and that basically said that normally as the weather starts to cool down, the problem may go away. There are some fungicides that you can use, but definitely, and one of the guides has a table with different herbicides that you can use. But I would double check the label. Some of those formulations are changing now. So we want to make sure that the label is correct for what you're trying to treat. And try some cultural practices first. Maybe try to get rid of some of the thatch that's in the yard to improve air circulation. Make sure you're watering in the early mornings and not in the afternoons where the water is sitting on there all night long. And make sure you're mowing at the correct height. Make sure your fertilizing regime is correct. And kind of go with those cultural practices first before you go into the sprays. And that is all that I have.
Thank you, Gwen. That was quite extensive. I know that Gwen and I visited about this and looked at lots of different potential possibilities of what this could be. We talked about the brown patch, but we also looked at summer patch. So the publication that was dropped in, and Gwen had that the front cover of that particular publication, and it's got some great pictures in there with lots of great recommendations. And I was kind of leaning perhaps towards summer patch, but it could also be brown patch. So to the individual who I know is on, who submitted the question, you might want to look at that and look under summer patch as well, because it's going to ask you questions about how the lawn looked when it was earlier in late spring and early summer. And so that might also be of some help and assistance as well. This was a challenging question, but Gwen and I got through it, and I think we have come up with some things. Turf is really difficult at times to determine what actually is going on. I'd also like just to add in general that fungicides are used. Fungicides do not kill fungus diseases. Actually, what a fungicide will do is to keep it in check and to keep it from spreading. So we need to keep that in the back of our mind. So if it is totally identified as a fungus, then making sure that you use the appropriate fungicide for that particular fungus, as well as following the practices where you might spray to prevent it from starting, or if it starts to come, spray in order to keep it in check. So those are just some additional thoughts as Gwen was talking that I thought I would add. But thank you, Gwen. Greatly appreciate all the work that you put into this one. Lawns can be challenging, so thank you.
I appreciate your help too. Thanks.
You're welcome, of course. It's always fun to learn. So we did have another question that came in. Specifically, it was, how can we keep squirrels from biting my tomatoes? And so Dr. Dave Trinklein is going to address that, and hopefully he'll give us all some really good tips on what we can do to prevent some of the wildlife that we see around in our gardens, and hopefully have a good crop. Dave, if you're talking, I'm not hearing you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
Do you see the subject for the day on the screen?
Of course we do.
Americans have a love-hate relationship with squirrels. I think more love than hate them because they're so cute and fluffy and animated. But that all changes whenever, oh, just a second here. They start to invade the garden, and they will sooner or later. So when that happens, they frankly lose a little favor and start to become a bit more of an enemy. And sooner or later, we are dealing with the squirrelzilla problem that is really affecting a lot of gardeners. What do you do with them? And I understand that there are some squirrels that might be even a bit aggressive toward people and what have you. Well, it's not an easy subject to cover because you have in the same neighborhood some people who are feeding the squirrels and some people who are wanting to get rid of the squirrels. And if you will, the squirrels might be just a bit confused, but let me tell you, they're going to go to wherever there is feed. So basically, squirrel management, and that would spill over to a lot of the critters that we have affecting our garden, but squirrels are a little bit of a different challenge since they can jump from branch to branch and so forth and come in from overhead, if you will. The first thing to do is to remove any attractant. And an attractant would simply be a source of food. Again, in the wintertime, we feed birds and the squirrels appreciate that. Won't be too long, and the garden centers, maybe the box stores, will have bags of squirrel corn that we feed squirrels and watch their antics and so forth. Well, those kinds of things have to be removed, especially during the growing season, if we're to guard our garden plants from squirrels. Repellents. There was an interesting study done involving a number of different repellents. The study involved putting some peanuts in the shell in a location and then spreading around the perimeter of that location about, I don't know, 3-foot diameter, a repellent. And the repellents ranged from critter repellent, which you can buy, mothballs, coyote urine, I don't know where you get that from, and rags soaked with household ammonia. The only one that was really effective were rags soaked with household ammonia. And how many of us are going to keep household ammonia rags around our tomato plants and so forth? So the bottom line is the use of repellents is not very effective. If you are located in a situation where there aren't that many squirrels, but they just seem to have found you, then trapping them and relocating them, preferably in a different county, is a way that we can thin out the population. In suburbia, the only natural control for a squirrel is an automobile. I think conservationists will tell you that's a squirrel's #1 enemy or cause of death because we don't have that many coyotes or dogs or owls or so forth. But trapping them can get rid of some problematic and hopefully thin the population out. Owls do, if you will, feed on squirrels, but again, in the cities, we don't find many owls. But we can find owl decoys, and perhaps for a while, a brief while maybe, fool the squirrels into thinking that this is real. It's important if you use these kind of decoys to alter the location of the decoy. Even a squirrel isn't dumb enough to think that an owl sits there 24 hours a day for about 2 months. So you have to alter where you put the decoy to have any chance for that to work. Encourage predators. Again, we like to think of a squirrel living a long life and dying a peaceful death, but on the other hand, fact of life is they're feeding on your tomatoes, and if you encourage predators such as birds of prey, I don't know that I encourage coyotes or so forth, but this can help to manage the population as well. Get a dog, perhaps the yippier, if you will, more barks and so forth, the better off you are. I don't know that a lot of us would like to keep dogs that we have on a leash around our tomato plants, but dogs can be a natural deterrent. The final one, sixth and final, is the most effective, although the most expensive, and that would be covering our garden plants. Be advised there are, I'll call that a structure that you can purchase to cover plants. This one you see is quite small. They do make them larger so that the squirrel has no chance of getting inside that. Homemade ones, such as this, get a bit more expensive, but on the other hand, you can grow things like tomatoes or sweet corn or other things that squirrels favor. There's no reason that those can't be used over and over. And if you look very carefully, especially at the left-hand one, you will see that they have netting, and that's called chicken wire netting over the roof so that there's no jumping in from a limb above or no scurrying over the top. Squirrels can climb through chicken netting and still get inside. So basically, the most foolproof, albeit the most expensive, would be to somehow cage our plants so that squirrels and other vermin, deer, rabbits, groundhogs, and so forth, cannot get to them. That is the most effective way. And if you're in a situation, you reside somewhere where there's a heavy population of squirrels, that might be the only way that you can successfully grow garden plants. With that, I would be happy to try to answer any questions. I'm not a wildlife biologist, but on the other hand, certain things that I have learned over the years, we tried to give you here, and it is a gardening problem with regard to our four-legged critters, as opposed to our invertebrates or so forth that we need to control. Debbie, that's all that I have, unless there are any questions.
There was just a comment in there. I thought I had a squirrel eating my tomatoes, but then I caught my cat eating them instead. Never would have thought my mouse control was the culprit. So
I would not either. That is extremely unusual.
I would say so.
I really would have to defer to a vet or so forth to see why that might be occurring. Are they sensing a deficiency that they're trying to make up? To me, a cat is a carnivore, not an herbivore, and that is unusual.
And I always enjoy your pictures when you do your presentations. I don't
Well,
know
thank
where
you.
you get them, but it's always so great. And thank you for showing the
Okay.
raised beds.
Yes.
My cousin has one. It's a nice sized garden, and he has
Great.
it totally fenced out.
Yep.
And he's also done the top, and he has not had any problems.
That will keep deer
yeah.
at bay as well.
Yes.
And deer can be a bigger problem than squirrels, as most of our listeners know.
Sure. And then another comment was that we had a dog that loved ripe tomatoes.
Boy.
So yeah, it's all out
interesting.
there. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. We appreciate
You are
you.
more than welcome.
And next we're going to have Eli. The Missouri Department of Conservation actually has trees available, and we just want to make sure that you all are aware of this opportunity.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Debbie. So this is one of my favorite things about living in Missouri is the Missouri Department of Conservation runs a nursery, and we can get their trees, native trees, actually. Um, oh. All right, great. So this is the George O. White State Forest Nursery. It's actually a CCC WPA project. It consists of 750 acres plus. It's named after the manager, George O. White, who managed it for a long time. And it's a great place, great place to visit if you're down that way. You can have a picnic. You can go do some fishing. Post Oak Flatwoods. You just have to make let them know you're coming if you want to do a tour. So there's this website, which should be in the chat. There's some really great information. I just want to highlight some things. So in this other resources section, they have how you can do some site prep and planning, planting methods and seedling care. There's even YouTube videos that talks about how to store your trees when you get them. You can see it here in bold. Do not store your trees in water. They come packed up, ready to be stored for a while. Just add some water. They also have, these are very small seedling whips. And so they have ways if you are planting a large amount or you don't have a lot of time, they have this reverse shovel method to get a nice hole to grow these seedlings in. So I actually use this method and it works pretty well. And I wanted to just highlight just when you get there to order seedlings, they have very nice pictures. They have, I don't even know how many different types of seedlings, but it's a very easy to use. When you click that button we saw on the previous slide, order here and more info, you can actually order the tree and it gives you a bunch more information about the tree. And of note, if you guys do decide to order some trees, getting this permit, this card for $2, this permit, can give you a 15% discount, I believe, which is something to take advantage of, being a resident in Missouri. And there's more growth information that if you open up the PDF catalog, as opposed to going to the online catalog, there's information you can find. Make sure you find trees that fit what you are looking for. MDC also has another site that lists a bunch of the native trees and gives you height, soil conditions, sun needs, and if it's slow or fast or medium speed of growth. It's really good information if you're thinking about adding some native trees and shrubs and bushes to your property. What I think is really interesting also is they buy seeds every year. So if you're out there tromping around in the woods or you have trees or bushes that fit with what they're looking for, they are willing to buy them. You do have to deliver them to the nursery, but I think it'd be pretty interesting. I know we got lots of folks on this call that are good at saving their own seed, may have interest in doing this. Here's some references, but the most important thing is you can order it online. You can order it via, I think, fax. You can try and send them a paper copy, but there's a lot of really popular trees on here, like the dogwoods sell out really quickly, and pawpaws and the fruit and a few other trees go really quickly. So ordering starts on September 3rd. And I guaranteed that day on September 3rd, something you may be interested in. If it's one of the really, like our dogwoods, will be sold out. So if you're interested in getting some trees for a really affordable price that are native, grown in Missouri, you can plant them back in Missouri. I highly suggest following up with the MDC Tree Nursery. That's what I got. Thanks for letting me share this.
Thank you for having us know about this resource. I knew it was there, but what I found most interesting was that PDF where if you click on it and you open it up, it gives you a lot of that great information, because we always talk about planting right plant, right place. And a lot of times some of the ways that our plants don't survive is because they are not in that right place. And so having those resources on that particular website when you're ordering those trees, I think is extremely important to have as well. So with that, what we're going to do is go ahead and close out for today. I do want to make sure that everyone is aware, next week, we are going to not offer the garden hour. And the reason for that is because we all are going to be attending a professional development training, and a lot of it is going to have to do with pesticide safety, the changing laws on pesticides and why some of those labels are always changing on a regular basis. And then hopefully we can come back and offer some additional information and education to you all. So it's a very important training that we need to attend. So we will not be here next week, but we will be here the following week. And remember, we're always looking for your questions. Go ahead and send those in to us. We're happy to answer those. If you're interested in some of the resources that were Donna put into the chat box, just go ahead and save your chat. You might look a little bit different on what version you have for Zoom, but you can click on the 3 dots and you can save it to your computer. And again, here are who we all are with our email addresses, and you're more than welcome to go ahead and get a hold of us, and we're happy to answer those questions for you. And with that, we hope that you have a great week, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks. Thank you.